A7 III versus Panasonic S1.
Yeah. Hi, this is JP Morgan.
And this is Kenneth Merrill.
Today we've got Haley Hudson with us here.
Hi guys.
She's going to help us look at the new Panasonic S1.
And the Sony A7 III. Not so new.
Not so new. So first off, we want to give a quick shout out to B&H, who's sent us all the cameras and really is a great support here at the Slanted Lens. A great place to be able to check out cameras and buy equipment.
I really love B&H, and they have their new Boo card, which will help you escape the taxes that you now have to pay when you order from them.
So that's a great thing. You're not avoiding the tax, B&H is paying it for you. So check that out. Well, let's get to our image quality test and let's get started here. So we're going to take a look at the image quality test. The reason I love this test is because we get to look at the sensors between these two cameras and just see how they react to a really nicely lit image and just see how the color looks on each of them. So we're back in the studio. Let's take a look at our picture quality test.
I just did some minor exposure slash, luminance adjustments here. I didn't adjust the color. They're both set to 5600 with the same tint level, and the color looks very different between the two.
Sure does. The Sony is much cleaner, the one on the right.
And much cooler.
Much cooler. The Panasonic on the left looks a lot more like Canon color to me. A little bit of orange, a little bit of orangish.
Yeah, and a little more green too. It doesn't show up so much here, but looking at all the other photos, we'll see that it's a little more green. Zooming in here on her eye, they're both super, super sharp.
We are using really incredible lenses. These two 50mm lenses that we have on here are top of the line.
This is 24 megapixels. It looks good for a 24 megapixel camera.
Really does. It looks exceptional.
So now we're going to do our dynamic range test. What we like to do here is we'll take one photo that's properly exposed according to a Sekonic light meter, and then we'll do 4 stops overexposed and 4 stops underexposed on each camera and see how correctable they are in post. One thing I want to note is that both these cameras, so we exposed by the meter, and both of these cameras are dark when the images come out of the camera by a full stop.
And you still see the same color. Look at the color difference in the two. In this one, I almost like the color rendition better with the Panasonic on the left. It's a little warmer, although the color is much cleaner on the Sony on the right.
-1 stop here, everything should be looking pretty good.
Yep.
Moving to -2 stops. This might be where we start to see some noise, especially given that these images were dark to begin with. But I don't really see anything here.
I'm not seeing it.
-3 stops. They're both really clean, but I do feel like the Sony's a little bit better here.
Really? I don't know. Look at her cheek. Look at it starts to clump up on her skin. Well, they're both starting to do it, but it seems to me like the Sony's a little more clumpy.
Interesting.
That's a technical term.
Clumpy. I don't know. I think I like the Sony better. We'll see. -4 stops. All right, yeah, definitely seeing some noise here.
Whoa, look at the Sony.
Sony does look worse, you're right.
Yeah, it's hitting the wall for sure. So the Panasonic has a better dynamic range than...
Well, at least in the shadows.
In the shadows, yeah. How about the highlights?
Well, +1 stops here. The wall behind is blowing out kind of out of the start. Of course, the wall behind is probably like +4 stops.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's looking pretty good at +1 stops. +2 stops on both these cameras. Both cameras are still looking pretty good. I feel like the Sony's got this weird color thing going on her face, though.
We're starting, both the whites on the wall on the back on both of these have pretty much lost all detail.
Mm-hmm. +3 stops. Yeah, now you can see that color shift all across her face and her shoulders.
Well, both of them are shifting now pretty bad. It's no longer that orangey, more pleasant orange look. It's kind of like an orangey, greeny look.
Yeah, yellow. And they seem to be going pretty much at the same time here.
Yeah, very similar.
We do +4 stops, and they're both pretty nuclear. I would say maybe the Panasonic has a little bit of an edge in the shadows, but other than that, they perform identically. I have to say the Sony is usually a top contender in the dynamic range department, so the fact that the Panasonic is equal to it, if not a tiny bit better, says a lot. That means if we stack this Panasonic up against the Nikon Z7 or the EOS R, we might see some really good results.
Mm-hmm. So let's take a look at the ISO test we just shot. 400 ISO. If I had to take these two out of the box, I would take the Panasonic absolutely hands down.
This one looks really nice.
It looks very nice. But in saying that, could I warm the Sony up and make it look just like that with just a minor adjustment?
Yeah, easily.
Minor adjustment.
Easily.
So these two color-wise are pretty dang close. There's 800 ISO.
Still really nice and clean.
Yeah, as her face, it looks pretty good. How about the blacks at 800?
Yeah, looking at this black chip, they look really good, really clean.
Now I'm seeing a 1600.
I see a little bit, yeah, texture.
I do too, and I feel like I see it more in the Sony than I do the Panasonic.
I agree.
Yep.
3200.
So 32, it's gonna have to start to fall apart on.
6400 ISO. The Panasonic just has this really nice kind of organic texture to it, whereas the Sony seems to block up.
It's starting to feel like it's becoming just a little bit, it looks over sharpened.
12,800.
Panasonic is bad, and the Sony is almost just pixelized.
Worse, yeah. I mean, the color still looks really, the image, if you kind of squint, the Panasonic still looks really good.
It does. It's a little nicer.
The color looks really nice.
But like you say, you could correct that color out with the Sony. I'm surprised.
I don't know. Look at this 25,000. Granted, this is an astronomical number here.
Yeah.
But looking at the Panasonic, it has a lot more consistency. The Sony's just falling off slowly as we go higher and higher.
Yeah.
The color gets duller. There's not as much tonality, whereas the Panasonic has a sort of consistency, even if it gets grainier and grainier.
512,000. The Sony is like just a total pixelization.
Yeah, I think the Panasonic wins here just for consistency. It's a little bit cleaner, but really for me it's about the color, the way the color maintains with the Panasonic.
Panasonic looks much cleaner to me. But again, we could correct that Sony without any problem. Okay, it's time for the autofocus test. We're just gonna have her walk towards the camera. We've done this a million times, but you know what? This is the one that just seems like it kills us every time.
Every time there's something wrong, some setting we don't get, or activating the nose detect is too hard. I don't know, it's just...
This one drives me crazy.
Yeah, I agree.
Because sometimes they seem to perform so well, and other times it seems like they struggle. Having said that, we know that the Sonys are pretty dang good. The eye detect, and they do really well, but the Panasonic, even though it is a contrast-based autofocus system, really performed pretty well.
Yeah, it did. I would say most of these are pretty usable. There are only a few that are too soft to use, and those are mostly up close.
Whereas it seemed uncharacteristic to me that we lost as many as we did with the Sony.
The A7iii did capture more images.
That's true.
So maybe you got the same amount of in-focus images between the two cameras, but the Panasonic did seem to have more consistency, which surprised me.
And we all know this, but I'll just say it here. But when you put a 300 megabyte card in there versus a 90 megabyte card, you can shoot a whole lot faster buffer-wise with these things.
Though we were shooting, just for clarity, we were shooting on the XQD card for this S1. So
that should be.
It's a matter of speed. The XQD can shoot a maximum of 9 frames per second, whereas the Sony does 10 frames per second, which after a few seconds is several more frames.
So it's time to shoot some video. Just take a look at the 4K video on both of these, and we don't have the new 10-bit 422.
It's
Kodak.
not available right now.
It's not on that. It's not on it yet.
So when the firmware is introduced for this camera, we'll get it back in and we'll shoot the 10-bit video in Vlog and see how that looks compared to S-Log or something like that. This test, I mean, we can't say too much about it because we're shooting a standard picture profile here. Obviously, both these cameras, especially when you get that Vlog in the Panasonic, will be able to do much flatter profiles, much more flexible images. But we just wanted to kind of see how the image looked in terms of resolution and sharpness and contrast and stuff. Both of these images, to my eye, look really smooth. The Sony's obviously brighter and a little more flat, I think, but both images resolve really well and have kind of a smooth look to them. Honestly, they both look really close.
They do.
These probably look closer to each other than any other of the cameras we've done this with.
As far as resolution, they look very clean. All right, let's just talk about overall feelings and the ergonomics and everything of these cameras.
Honestly, the more that we do these tests, the more I feel like the experience of actually using the camera is the most important factor, because most of these cameras are so good at what they do.
Well, even though the Panasonic S1 is a much larger camera than, say, the A7iii, it's nice to have all that real estate for buttons, for weight in my hand. I feel like it just sits in my hand better, but this is not going to be good for everyone. So it's going to be too heavy for a lot of people, and they're going to just find it too big and not worth the weight.
I'm with you. I actually don't mind it. I think the advantage of mirrorless cameras is generally their size. I mean, you look at the Sony and it's so tiny, but then you have the problem of these huge lenses to get the light to focus correctly on the sensor. So I've always complained that the mirrorless cameras always end up being front heavy, especially Sony's, and the Canon R gets super front heavy because those RF lenses are massive. This is a really well balanced camera. I like all the real estate. I think all the buttons are extremely well placed. The placement's actually pretty similar, I think, to the Sony camera, but for some reason, because of all the extra room, it doesn't feel as cramped and it feels easier to use. Yeah. So the fact that it's so similar in image really for me means it's all about ergonomics. And personally, I enjoy shooting with the Panasonic more. But Sony does obviously have its
I'm still a
draw.
huge fan of A7 III because I just think it's the great package of all of the things that we love about mirrorless, you know, and I think they're still keeping that small form factor. I think when you go to this, we're now going, okay, fine. We're giving up on the fact that mirrorless is small. Let's just go back to where we were before, so we have plenty of buttons and plenty of room, you know.
While we're at, there are a couple small features about this that are great. One is weather sealing. This is totally weather sealed, which is a big deal if you're, this overall seems like a more rugged camera.
Yeah, it does.
I like it has the electronic viewfinder button right here, so you can activate it or deactivate it just with this button. You don't have to go into a menu to choose which mode you're in, you know, if you're switching back between these for a gimbal or whatnot. I like that it has this little preview button that previews both the aperture and the exposure, but normally when you're looking through the EVF, it doesn't preview the exposure for you, it just shows you a clean image that you can see, whereas the Sony is showing you exactly what your sensor's getting.
Yeah. All right, well, two great cameras, and just, I mean, an older kind of camera with a brand new camera, but an older camera from Sony that really is still holding its own, I think, and is doing really well, so. Yeah. All right, if you've enjoyed these, please leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you, and make sure you follow the Slanted Lens, subscribe to our channel, and just keep those cameras rolling.
And keep on clicking.
Sorry.
No worries. And it's okay if things are kind of darker in the background, whereas other cameras may handle